friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction video 552. Jack in the neighborhood, my brothers and sisters. As we proceed to give you what you need, it is another Wednesday. So y'all know who we going back to? Mike from that chapter. That Chapter Wednesdays, y'all. Hope y'all doing excelente out there today. And I'm glad that you came on back to the channel once again to fuck with the bean. And the title of the video is National Park Killer Realizes Police Have a Secret Recording. Now, the first thing I'm thinking about, y'all, is this an audio recording or is it a video recording? You know what I'm saying, man? Because if it's just an audio recording, then it's probably the killer on the phone talking to somebody and they end up confessing and the freaking phone call was recorded. It was a tapped phone call, you know what I'm saying? Or if it's a video recording, it could actually be a video of the killer doing said killings. You know what I'm saying? It can actually be a video of them freaking murdering people. I don't freaking know, y'all. I don't know. But I'm ready to find out. I'm ready to go. But before we go, Bean Team, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. It is another delight because we going back to Mike. Y'all got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, when one day in March, a sort of elderly couple, they decided to go camping in a national park in Australia. They both had their own secrets, but you know, this camping trip in this beautiful part of Oz, this could be their time together. However, they soon vanished in that lonely, remote, and incredibly vast area. It would be a long ass time before progress would be made, and the progress that would be made would not make an already strange story. The progress wouldn't make the story any less strange and any less baffling, let me tell you that for free. Before we get into it, please subscribe to see new stories for the dark every single week. But now, let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go. Get whatever you may need. And I don't even like how this starting off, y'all. Like, when I hear stories about elderly couples, you know what I'm saying, man, I already start to feel like a little uneasy, man, because I just think about how old they is, just to be blunt with it. You know what I'm saying? They senior citizens or whatever, man. They are easy to freaking do the most craziest ish to, and it just make you feel like, damn, man, like they can't protect themselves better than younger people. That's all I'm saying. This gonna be a crazy one.
Victoria, southeast Australia, has a place in it, a vast and beautiful place called the High Country. It's a good few hours to the northeast of Melbourne, within the Alpine National Park. It's an area lots of folks go camping in, beautiful spots filled with peaks and valleys and forests, the whole thing. When you get the old noodle thinking of national park, you're probably thinking of something exactly like this place. Well, it was in March 2020 that Australia, and I mean pretty much the entire world, was in heavy lockdown, that a couple decided, you know what, mate? We're gonna go camping up there. That was 74-year-old Russell Hill and his partner 73-year-old Carol Clay. Russell had been, during his working life, a logger, not far from where he was in fact camping at this time. He had built some of the tracks in this national park. He was extremely familiar with it. He came up here all the time. He lived in a town called Druin, east of Melbourne. Carol, she was heavily involved in charities and community work in her suburb of Melbourne, and Russell and Carol had known each other since they were teens.
Dang.
And camping together was something Russell and Carol, they did together fairly often. It was their own little getaway. Little, getaway time together. Because they had to kind of get away. This was the only time they could actually be alone together. Because the twist was, Russell and Carol were having a secret affair. Russell was married to another woman, a woman named Robin. Yeah, I mean, it was a secret affair. A couple of Carol's friends knew, and a couple of Russell's friends kind of sorta knew. Russell's wife, Robin, did not know. Robin was...
This is a freaking plot twist if there ever is one, man. These people that old, that just let y'all know, man, it don't matter the age of you that you are as an adult. You can be cheated on. You can have an affair going on behind your back, or you could be the one committing the damn affair. You know what I'm saying, man? The cheating don't have no freaking age limit. These people in their 70s and they got side chicks and side men, whatever. Let's go.
Was aware of Carol. She just thought she was a family friend, that nothing more. See, Russell and Carol, they had been teenage sweethearts, each other's first love. But teenage relationships, they don't often last. And this one didn't either. But, so Russell went off, he married Robin, he has some daughters with her. Carol, she married a man, she had kids with him. But then later, Carol's husband died. And it was in the mid-2000s, about 20 years, I guess when they would have been in their 50s, about 20 years before all of this, they reignited. They just happened to meet each other. And being like, it's kind of a sweet story. Teenage lovers, years apart, and then reigniting all these years later. And so they kind of started seeing each other again. Carol did go on and marry another man, but soon divorced him as she was, let's be together. Carol and Russell will be together. She divorced her man. Russell was supposed to divorce Robin, but he backed out at the last minute. No. So therefore, Carol and Russell then began a secret affair. Yikes. And so for almost 2 decades at this point, Russell and Carol had been carrying on this secret affair, and camping would be how they would, get together. Russell would go camping all the time, and his wife and family, they thought Russell was going camping alone. Yeah, no. And so Russell Hill picked up Carol Clay at her home on the morning of March 19th, and together they set off for their time alone together in this beautiful part of the country. They were going to a place called the Woolnoongata Valley in this national park, the Alpine National Park.
And just the fact that their affair been going on for basically 20 freaking years, man, that is a long time to be cheating on your partner. You know what I'm saying? Without them even finding out. That's kind of scary for people to be in a relationship to think about something like that. Imagine that you marry somebody at the age of 20, then you find out in y'all 40s that he been cheating on you since then. Or she been cheating on you since then. That is crazy to even think about.
Later that day, March 19th, they reached the Woolnoongata Valley, and they were going to park up and camp at a spot called Bucks Camp. Now in this valley, phone reception pretty poor, so when nobody could really speak to them or get true to them, that wasn't a surprise at all. But of course, Russell had told his wife Robin that he would be home on March 26th, 2020, a week after he had left. And when he didn't come home, that's when Robin started to get worried. Even more worried, because just a couple of days before, Russell's friends had called Robin asking, "Where's Russell?" See, Russell Hill was part of this little club. It was like a radio club. He had his radio buddies, and he would be checking in every night on the radio. Cell service didn't work, but they had radio, so he would check in every night on the radio and say "G'day" or "Good night," with his friends. And so when he hadn't checked in after a couple of days, his friends began to worry. They called Robin. She began to worry. And when he wasn't back when he was supposed to be back, that's when she called the police to report her husband missing. 2 days later, Carol's family, they reported her missing, as they obviously, not many people knew they had, gone together. The police set out for Bucks Camp, where they had been staying, but when they arrived, they found the campsite was burned out.
Oh.
They found Russell's Land Cruiser blocked, and the entire camp had been set ablaze. Now, you can't see it, obviously, but, they had a very awesome camping setup. It wasn't just a tent. Like, the tent was huge. They had an outdoor shower area, and Russell would often bring his expensive drone to film the place, and take cool-ass shots while he was there. His DJI Mavic was his new hobby. In fact, other campers there in this area at this time would say, yeah, we've seen a drone flying around. One person said, oh yeah, he looked up, seen a drone, he waved at the drone, and the drone like tipped its wing. I guess kind of as a reply greeting. Russell was there with the viewfinder, camera, whatever you call it. But some other campers would say they had been camping, not terribly far away, and a drone had like come into their camp and like been hovering around there, and they were like, listen, this is not on, privacy. Like, they would say it was buzzing a little bit too close. They would describe it as a bit rude, but that was not there. In fact, there was nothing here other than Russell's car and a burnt out campsite, and no sign of Russell Hill nor Carol Clay. They could not find their phones, they couldn't find much of their items, and Russell's car was there, but it was still drivable. It was locked, so when they looked in though, they found, purse, wallet, that kind of thing. So this quickly became a priority for the authorities there. You got 2 people missing in this vast national park, and what happened? Had there been some sort of accident where their campsite had burned down via yada yada yada? Well, if that happened, why hadn't they driven to go for help? Had they been out, in the woods somewhere, they got into an accident, they're not exactly spring chickens, had they fallen, had they gotten lost? Getting lost didn't seem likely. Russell came to this campsite and this area all the time. He used to work as a logger in this park. He knew it extremely well. So they kind of had a gut feeling that something not good.
Police and the
Like, the only thing that I could, if I was working on this case and I seen that campsite and I knew the situation of what was going on, they aged the couple and all that, I'd be like, man, more than likely they either got kidnapped or they got kidnapped and murdered. You know what I'm saying, man? Maybe they still alive, maybe they still not. Just the fact that the damn campsite was burned down, that would make me feel like that. Now, the campsite was still up and everything looked normal and they just was gone, then I would think that maybe they got lost in the woods or something. But one thing I want to say real quick, y'all, is I understand that let me put it this way. Follow me real quick. I know I keep harping on the fact about them being this age and cheating and all that, but that don't excuse them getting murdered. I just want to go and put that out there, man. I'm not excusing them getting murdered, but I'm just saying, think about this right here. I think her name is Robin. I can't remember the man name right now, but Robin is his real wife that don't know he been having this affair for 20 plus freaking years. You know what I'm saying? And she in her 70s too. So when she find out that this man been cheating on her for 20 plus freaking years, ain't like if you 40 or you're 30 when you find this out, your life pretty much is over. You pretty much, it ain't like you can bounce back and be like, okay, well, that was a failed relationship, but I still got time to find somebody else to fall in love with. Man, it's just different at their age. That's all I'm saying. I hope y'all was following me. Let's go.
SES have stepped up the search in Victoria's high country for a missing elderly couple.
The pair who have disappeared are well known in the community. Carol Clay is the much-loved former state president of the Country Women's Association. She and Russell Hill took off on a camping trip on March the 19th. They were headed to the Dargo River in East Gippsland, but on Friday, Russell Hill's Land Cruiser was found at a campsite in the Wonnangatta Valley. There was no sign of the pair, but both the vehicle and a tent were fire damaged. So there are now 30 police, SES volunteers and Parks Victoria staff who are searching that area.
The search spread out throughout the valley from there. Searchers, police drones, dogs, whirlybirds, and the police would speak to a few people who had been in the area. See, the scene of the campsite had actually been discovered way earlier, back on March 21st, by a hiker who had come across this burnt out camp, had taken pictures, but he hadn't reported it to the police. I guess he didn't feel there was anything suspicious to report. However, that gave the authorities a timeline of whatever happened. They had arrived there on March 19th, but by March 21st, the place had been burnt out. So if something bad had happened to Russell and Carol, it had happened pretty soon after they had arrived. People did say, as I said, they believed they saw Russell's drone. A couple of other people would say they saw an elderly couple walking around and they'd wave at them and yada yada yada. At this point they were still hoping maybe they just got lost in the park, but the more time went on, the less likely that seemed, my friends. Now, just to say briefly, the High Country as it's called, and this national park, it does have a long history of some kind of gruesome and spooky events happening here. I mean, about 100 years before this, there's a very famous double homicide that happened inside the park that's still unsolved to this day.
Wow.
There's been some weird sightings in this park. There's been some unexplainable disappearances, even around this time. I mean, Carol and Russell were like, oh, here's some more weird shit that happened in this park. There's been plenty of people who went in this park and were never seen again. However, one of the most famous stories from this area is the story of the Button Man. Allegedly, the Button Man is a strange man who lives in the wilds of this park. He lives off the land. He, makes spears and lives in his little hut. And he's called the Button Man because allegedly he makes buttons from deer antler. And he scares the shite. He scares the absolute bejesus out of plenty of campers and hikers in here because they'll be at their campsite, lighting a fire at night, and he will just be stalking them, walking around their campsite. He appears out of nowhere. Apparently he gets a thrill out of hunting people. It's not believed he's killed anybody, but apparently he just enjoys hunting them. People will be at their campsite and they go off hiking for the day. They'll come back, things will have been moved around. They'll stash things, they're missing. One famous story is of a photographer who went into this national park, and he was a wildlife photographer, so he was there for a couple of days, camping alone, taking pictures of the nature, the birds and the beasts and the yada yada yada. After spending a few days alone in the wild, he then goes home to his house. He gets out his camera, where he's taken, thousands of pictures, puts the SD card in, and opens up the files, right? Just looking through all of the pictures that he's taken over the last few days, and then he spots one picture, and he feels sick to his stomach. It was a photo of himself, asleep in his tent.
Oh!
No one knows who took that photo, but it's believed to have been the Button Man.
Oh my god.
This video is about a couple who completely vanished inside a national park. People doing everything they could to try and find them. This video is all about people who are found in impossible places they should not by any rights be in. But let me ask you this, Hotshot. What
Mike with his commercial, man. But I also want to point out too, y'all, I think it's the drone. I think the drone is the secret recording that Mike talking about in the title that the police have or whatever. I don't know, but do that make sense for real? Like, how could it be the drone? Unless the drone was flying in the air while whoever came and kidnapped them or killed them or whatever. I don't know. I'm getting a little nervous too now, y'all, because I don't know if this case gonna get freaking solved. Hope it's not an unsolved mystery. Let's go.
back, or maybe it had filmed somebody who would...
Hold up. Let's take it out right here.
A vital clue would have been Russell's drone. Maybe that filmed where they'd last been. Maybe they had gotten lost out in the wild and he'd been using it to try and find his way back. Or maybe it had filmed somebody who had been up to no good, but they couldn't find his drone. So this was March, but Southern Hemisphere. It was going into winter, and the snow would soon be falling. These searches would dwindle fairly soon. However, this case was changed. It no longer was a missing persons case. It would soon be classed as a double homicide. So Russell and Carol couldn't be found, and their phones, they had no cell reception in the peaks and the valleys of this massive national park. Australia, it's fairly big, so they couldn't trace them via that. The last that Russell and Carol's phone had pinged had been just as they were entering the valley, and then they kind of just went dead. Reception would be shite, and it likely wouldn't reconnect if they'd gotten lost. But that was what the authorities were thinking. But Russell's phone actually did. It did reconnect. It reconnected on the morning of March 21st. So 2 days after they had arrived in the park. And March 21st, that was the same day a hiker had first stumbled across the Bucks Camp burnt out campground. So, And it reconnected at a tower way away from where they had been, on the other side of the mountain range. Popped up on a signal, cross-referencing where his phone had pinged and the time it had pinged. on the borders of this national park with some CCTV they had set up in that same area. The park had CCTV to make sure that people were, paying their licenses and their registrations to go and do stuff in the park. Well, they hit on this vehicle. That was not Russell's, but it was at the same time and in the same place as when Russell's phone pinged. So who was that? And why did he have Russell's phone? It was a dark-colored Nissan Patrol with a trailer, and the driver looked to be male. Police released these images asking if anyone recognized this vehicle. Speaking to folk, witnesses who had been in the park that day, people who, they bumped into Russell and Carol or they'd seen them driving around, a few of them would say, oh yeah. I also remember seeing, this Nissan dark-colored blue Nissan that day. He had actually been going in the direction of Bucks Camp also. Now, this is the part of the story when public knowledge and police activity kind of diverge, because while this story was huge, it was really super big. I remember hearing about the story when it first happened. Not on the surface and released to the media, it seemed like almost nothing. It seemed to be just a case of they just vanished into the woods, and months and months and months would pass with little to no activity. But the police investigation, they were very, very busy. It took the police just about a couple of weeks to get the driver of that car, because as you can see in the photo, although it's blurred out, the reg was visible in the original unedited image. And the driver of that vehicle was a man named Gregory Stewart Lynn. Greg Lynn was 53 years old at the time, married and lived in Melbourne. He worked as a pilot, but he was currently grounded as a result of the pandemic, so he took odd jobs here and there. But what he really loved was hunting and foraging in the woods. At his home, he kept plenty of guns, knives, and that sort of thing. And it was in July 2020, 4 months after Russell and Carol disappeared, that the police, they went to speak with him at his home. Now, when the police were just going to speak with him that July day, he was currently just listed as a witness. They knew he'd been in the area at the time, but it didn't have anything more really to connect him to whatever happened to Russell and Carol, other than the fact that Russell's phone pinged in the same place he had been driving. So they spoke to Greg at his house and he said, g'day. And they started, yapping away about this and that. Hey, were you in, the Warrangata Valley? He said, yes, I was there. I was parking at the camp and yada, yada, yada. But I didn't see anything. His story was, well, nothing odd about his story. In fact, he was kind of forthright about everything that he knew. So the police spoke to him anyway, and yapping away and shooting the shit. And anyway, they left the house. As they were walking out of Greg Lynn's home, they saw his car. The Nissan Patrol, right? Parked out there. There was one thing that was weird about it, though. It was now beige.
What?
He had repainted his car. He had repainted it after the police released the images of it. The police would...
Okay, buddy, now you starting to look a little freaking suspicious, man. Why did you suddenly change your freaking car up, bro? Why did you change the color of it?
Publicly leave him alone for almost a year and a half after that. Now, publicly they were, but they were not. They set up secret cameras watching him. They bugged his phone, they bugged his home, they bugged his vehicle. They were purely zoning in on Greg Lynn as having something to do with Russell and Carol's likely murder. In the meantime, sporadic searches continued, but to other places than where the camp was, trying to find a possible dump site. This case remained big news. An elderly couple, each other's first love. It's rekindled into a secret affair and then both murdered in the woods. Scary story. But was it Greg, a pilot and a secret serial killer? Were there other suspects? Not really, or at least never publicly named. In fact, the police were kind of just looking at Greg, and they would slowly release more information as time went on about, oh hey, we believe this has something to do with the case. They were releasing this information because they were trying to make Greg crack, like the way he had cracked by repainting his car after they released an image of it.
Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Stamper. I'm the Detective Inspector in charge of the Victoria Police Missing Persons Squad, and I'm here to appeal to the community in relation to the disappearance of Russell Hill and Carol Clay on the 20th of March 2020 from the Warrangata Valley in Victoria. Today we are releasing 2 images of a vehicle which we believe will help assist us in resolving this matter. They are of a dark blue
It would all be very sudden when news came out on November 23rd, 2021, so over a year and a half after the double disappearance, that police announced an arrest had been made. The arrest of a 55-year-old man from Caroline Springs.
Last night, Assistant Police Commissioner Bob Hill spoke to the media after charges were announced. He said police were relieved to have got to this point in what's been a long 20-month investigation. He said his officers are fatigued, but they know there's more work to do.
See, Greg Lynn was actually arrested by the police after, well, so they'd been listening into his conversations, his phone calls, his everything for like almost a year and a half. They would say they have 5,000 recordings of him. It was one of the last recordings where they heard Greg talking to himself and crying as they were releasing, bits and bobs of more info. And the police, hearing this, they actually believed he might self-harm. And he was due to go into the national park at the time, so the police, they were like, we should get him. We should get him right now before maybe he does something stupid. They nabbed him and they brought him in, and Greg Lynn spoke freely without an attorney present. What is believed to have happened is this, and this is Greg's story, by the way, because there was nobody else present, there was no other witnesses. Greg went out camping to Bucks Camp. He was there, and he was there before Russell and Carol arrived, so he was there, shooting a shit. Russell and Carol arrived to the same campsite, they gave him a good eye, and he said, they were very friendly. There was just the three of them there. They were having friendly conversation to begin. All good.
My camp was here.
Yep,
And
okay.
They came in after the greeting. Very cordial, very, very pleasant. They camped there.
Yep.
Later that, what are we talking about?
So you're talking on Thursday.
Thursday night was uneventful. I didn't see them.
The next day, which was March 20th, Greg was out hunting deer. And as he was out there with his shotgun, a drone, Russell's drone, buzzed by him really, really low and, bothered Greg a lot. So when Greg got back to camp, he had he spoke to Russell about, listen, check yourself with the drone.
And I looked up and there was a bloody drone right above my head. And that was bizarre. And then as I looked up, I only had gaze on it for a couple of seconds, and then whoosh, and it was like gone.
Yep.
All right, what's this all about?
Remember, it was said by...
I don't know if I believe anything Greg telling us right now, man. It sounds like he making up a story as he goes. Just to me, I don't know. This sound like he lying.
multiple people that Russell didn't exactly respect people's space when he was using this drone. Allegedly, Russell did not take too kindly to that, and he called him a bogan, if you can believe it, and he said he knew that Greg was hunting too close to the campsite. He tried to make a false report to the police saying he was hunting too close to the campsite, and he would say, "I've got the drone footage to prove it."
I asked him why he was using the drone, and he said that he didn't like deer hunters, and that he had some video footage of me now hunting, close to the camp. And I said I wasn't. I was right up the valley, but he's got pictures of me with the rifle in hand, close to the camp, and that he was going to take those pictures to the police. And I said that's just ridiculous. I think the whole purpose of it was he just wanted me to go.
Yeah.
Greg then went back to his own camp and he started blaring music from his car, just trying to pick the most annoying song he possibly could, just to piss off Russell and Carol.
I did turn the stereo up and played some loud music, which is a bit of a childish thing to do.
What happened then, we don't really know, but Greg's story goes like this. Russell snapped. He had too much of him playing this loud-ass music. He went over to Greg's camp and he grabbed his shotgun, his loaded shotgun, and he walked with it back to his own camp. Greg obviously went after him. That's my gun, and that's obviously very dangerous. So Greg tried to get it off him. Greg said Russell fired 2 shots into the air, as in trying to scare Greg away as he was stealing his own weapon. But somehow Greg and Russell, they got into a tussle, a grapple, they had a row over the gun. They were fighting with it, and Greg was trying to, get it off Russell, and somehow, in all of this, someone's finger went on the trigger. And the firearm discharged. And of all the places it discharged, it was aimed at Carol. And it blew her head off.
Oh.
One shot and she was dead.
To try and disarm him, I jumped up, I grabbed the shotgun barrel with my right arm, pivoted around so I was facing him facing away from the bonnet of the car. I had the left hand on the stock, right hand on the barrel, and we wrestled. The shotgun was pointed over this way, and it was discharged. My hand was not on the trigger, it was on the barrel. Right hand, left hand on the stock, pushing up against him. He wouldn't let it go, it discharged. She was shot through the head. I saw her in the peripheral.
Greg would say his finger was not near the trigger when it went off, but it somehow did. Regardless, Carol Clay was killed instantly. Greg, he got the shotgun and he ran back to his own camp. Russell, in shock, enraged, roaring with his head off, he grabbed a knife and started towards Greg Lynn's camp with his dead, lover at his feet. Apparently he was screaming just, "You killed her, you killed her, you killed her."
Man, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm starting not to believe this story more and more as we go, man. I don't know if I believe Greg's story. I'm not gonna say I don't believe it 100%, but it just be so effed up when the person who's still alive can tell the story, but the damn victims of the story can never speak their piece, man. This could have went completely different than what he is saying right now. We have no evidence really to prove it. What was the secret recording that Mike spoke of when Greg was on the phone crying about something? Like, we need more evidence than that, man. Long story short story long. But at the same time, at least we know Greg is admitting to killing these people, though. He at least admitting to that. But I'm just saying the story I don't know if this how it actually happened.
Advances towards me with a knife in his right hand and a fist clenched in his left.
He was swinging the knife at Greg. They got into another tussle. They were fighting over this very sharp blade. They ended up on the ground, were rolling around in it, and then Greg stood up. Russell didn't. Greg looked down, and somehow Russell had the knife sticking out of his own chest. Russell.
See what I'm saying, man? Both of the deaths was accidental, so to speak. Y'all was fighting over the gun, and that's how y'all end up killing Carol. Then you and Russell was fighting in some kind of way. He died from getting stabbed with the knife. Are you sure that it was accidents, or you actually pulled the trigger and you actually stabbed that man? That's what I'm saying, man. I don't know his story. I don't know if I believe it, being teen.
Russell died right there. Greg panicked. One person has been just shot with his own shotgun, and now there's another person dead here with a knife sticking out of his chest. Greg thought to himself, well, there's no way this will end well for me.
And from here, I panicked. I'm going to be found guilty of this, and I tried to cover everything up, and everything else is pretty much as you say. That was on Friday the 20th.
Yep. About what time?
It would have been about 9 or 10.
He said he put the bodies into his trailer, he cleaned up the scene, and he burnt down their campsite. He then drove through the night to find a place to dump their two bodies, and as he was driving, he didn't realize, or he totally forgot, that he had Russell's phone in his pocket. If he hadn't, who knows if this case would ever have been solved. The bodies were in that trailer when this image was taken. He later found a place to dump the bodies, and he sold the trailer he stored the bodies in. 7 months after he dumped the bodies, he returned to the spot, remote in the national park, and he burned them. He waited there till they were burned to ash. And he kind of went over to the ash and just fragments and threw them around, just trying to scatter it, trying to make it not look like this, what it was, a burn site of two humans' remains. Police later found the fragments of Russell Hill and Carol Clay's bodies. Greg did lead them. They found, again, parts of the skull, a few bits of bones, some jewelry that Carol had been wearing. It wasn't much, but at least it was something for their poor families. The police were fairly onto him after the car was spotted, and they were watching him. For instance, they kept bringing up the car with the media in hopes he would crack. They made a point to mention the retractable awning on the roof. Guess what? One of their hidden cameras. The next day, they had footage of Greg removing the awning.
Wow.
Greg Lynn went on trial in May 2024. He pleaded not guilty to the murders. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Greg said he was innocent of murder, but that his actions were despicable. The prosecution said he was a cold-blooded killer who murdered 2 people, concocting some story of self-defense. Jury deliberations lasted a week, at the end of which he was found guilty of Carol's murder, but not guilty of Russell's death. He's now facing 25 years in prison.
What?
So there you have it. Secret lovers, rendezvous, campers, national parks, pilots, stories of self-defense and murder. Whole heap of secrets and lies. You know, who knows if Greg is telling the truth? Your guess is as good as mine, folks. There's only the 3 people there and 2 of them are dead.
Yep.
I guess his story could sorta make sense, but who really knows? I mean, the jury in the end, they sorta half believed him. Because he was only found guilty of 1 murder, not the 2, so they believed they believed 50% of what he was saying was the truth. So 1 murder, 1 accident, and tragedies left behind for the families of Mr. Russell Hill, Ms. Carol Clay, and also, I mean, Greg Lynn's family. They have to move on after he killed 2 people. A weird story from one of the weirdest national parks that's out there.
Yeah, it's weird.
Thank you so much for watching. It absolutely means the world to me. As always here, folks, if you're looking for some more good old That Chapter stories, please check out the podcast, which is out every single Monday morning. It's all completely unique stories for the podcast. Most recently, we were talking about the Greenbrier ghost murder. So, you know, give it a go. But here, listen, who am I to tell you what to do? Do what you like. The next video will be out real soon. So until then, please take care of each other and yourselves. Because I love you for taking the time out of your day to watch this whole video. Mike out.
Yeah, this was a more weirder one than we usually watch from Mike, y'all. And the 2 things at the end that like really got me is, number 1 is like, you got the audacity, and I'm talking about Greg, you got the audacity to sit up here and say not guilty to these murders. Like, bro, your story to me is just like, it ain't moving me. Like, I would not believe you before I believe you in these from your story, you know what I'm saying, how you saying everything went down. And the second thing that got me is just the fact that it's like, dude, he didn't get found guilty for Russell murder. Like, come on, man. Even if he's saying that, well, if you weren't gonna charge him with murder, he should at least got manslaughter, right? Or something. It's manslaughter, like when you accidentally, let me put my quotation marks up, when you accidentally kill somebody, right? He should at least got that much. I don't know, man. This one here, like I said, it was weird, very convoluted, and for all we know, like I said, I really don't trust his story, because we don't even know if he did, Russell even got stabbed. For all we know, that man could have literally just shot both of them in the head. Boom, boom. And then just came up with this crazy story. And while he was sitting right there telling the police the story, he writing down on the piece of paper, I kind of got the vibes that he was just making this story up as he was going. He was illustrating it on paper. You know what I'm saying, man? I don't freaking know, y'all. This is one of those ones, well, and it's a weird one too on this level, because even though we can say we don't truly know what happened to Russell and Carol, we can say that the dude who did it was found. You know what I'm saying, man? It's not an unsolved mystery. It's kind of a solved mystery. It's a solved mystery that we know who did it, but it's still an unsolved mystery because we don't know how it happened. But like I said, man, at least we know that much. And it's crazy that he would confess to it, but then say he not guilty. And I guess his reason that he not guilty is like what Mike said, a convoluted mess of self-defense. Oh, man, this one right here, one of the ones that'll make my head hurt, my brothers and sisters. So I digress. I'm gonna go and let y'all go now, man. I appreciate y'all coming on back, as always, on another Mike from That Chapter Wednesday. And before y'all leave, just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And come on back to my road. And I don't know where we gonna go, but we gonna go. But until then, my friends, I also need y'all to remember this: love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.